This week begins a new sermon series, wondering, who are you? I hope that you'll stay with us through this time because we want to explore who are we and who is God as we go through these next 9 weeks in preparation for Lent, just to understand our journey and who we might become as God's disciples, following what God has already given to us. So, today's scripture lesson, all about the wise men. And you might ask yourself, what could have possibly led the Magi from a distant place to follow a star and seek a Hebrew king? Some believe they were astrologers seeking wisdom in those stars. Others believe they were kings discontent with their day-to-day world, a little bored and searching for meaning in their lives. Others still question the reality of these 3 kings and believe they were merely a construct by Matthew to represent God's salvation to all people. Matthew begins with the story of God's message reaching out to people beyond Judea and Israel, and then it also reaches out beyond Christ in the end and Jerusalem to all the world. That's how Matthew sees the good news coming. And so that's very possible. But what about the desire that we know we all have to have something greater than ourselves, to search for that? What that spark, that initiative that makes life worth living? Could that have also been their driving force, as it is often for ourselves? Matthew actually never calls the Magi kings. That idea seems to have crept in later from the prophecies of Isaiah 60. Their role is an intriguing one, though fuller and richer than that of the shepherd that comes to the manger, bringing on the scene a touch of the alien and the strange. Traditionally, their names were known as Caspar, Melchior, and Balthazar. Not sure where that came from, except tradition. Scientific, maybe cynical, they entered into the story of the Nativity as seekers of truth, caught in the journey of life, not only asking who the one is that is foretold, but who am I? Who am I to seek him? So they follow this star to answer the questions that I believe we all have. Who am I to seek Christ? And who is this really that I am asked to follow? And so the journey begins for the Magi. It took many months, perhaps even years, for them to cross those barren deserts and strong rivers through strange countries with different customs until the star, which went ahead of them, came to rest at the place where the Christ child lived. We know the story well. And so they were called to this place and knelt and honored and worshiped him. And the scripture says they were overwhelmed with joy. One Advent evening, parents of 4 children were invited to be the audience in the living room. And so they went to the living room and sat down obediently on the couch. And their 4 children decided to have a nativity play. And so they came into the living room to find Jesus played by a flashlight, wrapped in a blanket, and then Joseph in his bathrobe carrying a mop handle, and Mary draped in a sheet looking very serene and very serious, and the angel of the Lord with pillowcase wings. The youngest, however, had chosen to play one of the 3 kings, and she had a great big pillowcase filled with gifts, and she felt bound and determined to tell her parents, "Mommy, Daddy, I'm the 3 wise men, and I have precious gifts of gold, circumstance, and mud." The natal star calls to all of us, as it did those initial wise men, asking us to trust and to follow and to know God. The journey is one of faith, encouraging us to abandon convention and seek a different path and follow our star. However, the journey is much harder when we are weighed down by gold, circumstance, and mud. Offering up those three items allows us the freedom to seek Christ, to honor and worship him, and have great joy ourselves. Our gold that weighs us down is really our enslavement to money. We spend so much time and energy trying to acquire, save, and manage money that often becomes the focus of our lives. Will I have enough money to pay the bills? If I'm able to pay the bills, then am I able to save? If I'm able to save, am I able to give to other charities? How am I going to manage what I have? Is that who we really are? Our gold need not define us. Offering our gold to God, offering that up out of our hands, knowing that God is in charge, is a symbol of our commitment to a different set of values. Our circumstance, which also weighs heavy upon us, is how we exist amidst a host of particular, limiting, sometimes depressing, sometimes challenging circumstances. But it's safe to say that none of us considers any particular circumstance in our lives to be ideal or the full embodiment of all our hopes and dreams. The thing is not to allow your circumstance also to define you. Set yourself free from circumstance. Give up what might have been and live for what is right now. Don't worry about what may be. Allow God to take care of the rest. Offer him your circumstance. Our mud is all about the dirt and the grit that we acquire in our lives. Sometimes we're dirtier than others. There's all these shoulda, woulda, couldas in our lives, all those mistakes, mishaps, errors. And it makes us feel slimy, dirty, silty, a muddy mess, as if we've just come out of a mud puddle. By offering up the dirt, the errors, the mistakes, the sin of our lives to Christ, we are able to wash away that muddy human nature and cleanse our souls with Christ's love and grace. Following our star may take a lifetime of searching and questioning, mistakes and successes, denial and belief, until one day, like the Magi, our star stops and reveals Christ before us in all his glory. And it's then at that moment we make that final sacrifice of all we have been, all we are, all we were ever meant to be, because we will finally know who we are and whose we are. For all of us, Isaiah wrote, "The Lord called me before I was born, and while I was in my mother's womb, named me." God knows who we are. The question is whether we will find out who we are as God knows us. Perhaps when we trust the star that God has hung for us to seek him, we will move toward a life that is at the fullest we can imagine and discover joy that fills every part of our heart. What path, what journey is God shining his light for you today? Follow your star.